Hello everyone and welcome to the Vortex, where lies and falsehoods are trapped and exposed. I'm Michael Voris. Reports swirled around the internet earlier yesterday that the Pontifical Biblical Commission had given its approval to a reading of sacred scripture that approves of homosexual unions. The reports were based on a new 300-plus page book entitled, What is Man? Some media outlets reported the book said the following things about homosexuality. That homosexuality is, quote, a legitimate and dignified expression of the human being. The media reports continued quoting the book, quote, a new and more adequate understanding of the human person imposes a radical reservation on the exclusive valuation of the heterosexual union in favor of an analogous reception of homosexuality and homosexual unions. In short, the media report said, the Commission was saying the time for looking at heterosexual unions as the only morally permissible union is at an end. Put the brakes on the idea of just heterosexual unions. The Church has been wrong for 2,000 years. It's time now to include homosexual unions as also morally legitimate. That's the way the media reports went. Again, media reports continued that after much wordsmithing and twisted interpretation by pro-gay scholars, the Old and New Testament condemnations were little else than, quote, cultural features of that time. While there's still much speculation about why those types of references are in the report at all, one thing is certain. Because of the current pro-gay climate that has been created in the Church, Catholics on both sides jumped on the media reports and treated them as accurate. Orthodox Catholics rightfully went ballistic over the possibility that the Vatican and the Francis papacy had finally come totally out of the closet, and the homosexual camp in the Church was gaga over the report, as seen here in a tweet from Brokeback Martin celebrating what he thought was an accurate report. Why was everyone so ready to believe these reports? That's easy. Because homosexual men admitted into the seminary by other homosexual men, ordained by homosexual men, consecrated bishops by homosexual men, seizing operational control of the Church, have brought the Church to this point. Men like James Martin is little else than the latest in a long line of homosexuals in the clergy, whose entire reason for entering the clergy was to get the Church to bless their filth. It all started with a communist agent invasion beginning almost a century ago, and now a century later, the Church is coming apart at the seams. And hundreds of millions of wimpy, head-in-the-sand Catholics who have zero understanding of the idea that the faith must be fought for in every generation simply whistle past the graveyard because they're too terrified to get into the fight. The pro-homosexual clerics are bastard sons of the Church. They must be called out and challenged at every turn. They have no love for Christ, no love for His Church, and no love for the souls of those they corrupt on the march to perverting the teachings. Sodomy is not a gift. It is an evil that, if participated in and unrepented of, leads a soul to hell forever, like many other mortal sins. But too many of these scholars and clergy are homosexuals themselves or completely embracing of it, so they may gain church support for their personally immoral lives. That's the whole score here. All of this was painfully evident when the homosexual clergy child sex abuse scandal burst upon the Church in 2002. That was brought into the Church by homosexual priests and bishops, and there were loads more homosexual activity within the clergy and hierarchy than just child abuse. It's just that a portion of these sick men also attacked children, and that is what brought the truth into the open. Yet, even still today, homosexual cardinals and their allies continue to deny the plain truth. Men like Blaise Supich and Joseph Tobin continue to spew out that homosexuality has nothing to do with homosexual abuse. Yet in nearly every single example of scandal still being vomited into the world from the Church, homosexuality is front and center. Buffalo Bishop Richard Malone resigned for covering up homosexual abuse. Michael Bransfield had to step down in disgrace for homosexual abuse. Walter Rossi, the rector of the National Basilica of the Immaculate Conception, is being investigated by not one but two dioceses for homosexual abuse. Crookston Bishop Michael Hepner is being investigated for covering up homosexual assault and lying to parishioners and his clergy. Cardinal Dolan of New York ignored years of complaints and covered up for homosexual priest Peter McQuelly, who was stealing from parishes to support a sex addiction for gay prostitutes. The list of homosexual crimes committed against the faith by prelates and priests goes on and on and on. Gay, drug-fueled orgies in the Vatican, Roman clergy frequenting gay bars, gay officials promoted by Francis, abusive homosexual prelates covered up for by him, his own number 2 accused of covering up for a wildly abusive homosexual bishop. As we said, it goes on and on. Homosexuality as a gift in itself is now ensconced in the Vatican as perfectly normal. What Catholics need to understand is really pretty simple once you get your head wrapped around it. Nearly every current bishop in the West has been part of the homosexualization of the church. At the very least, they have sat by and said nothing. But the majority understand they were in the seminaries when these seminaries were hotbeds of homosexualities in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, into the 90s. They were engineered starting in the 1960s to recruit, form, and ordain gay men and weed out heterosexual men. Once ordained, they patiently worked their way up the career ladder, promoted by other gay men, all with the single intent of corrupting the church into teaching that their filth is moral and acceptable. And now they have reached a point where they feel free enough to say that Scripture has it wrong. Brokeback Martin tweeted that very thing himself weeks ago, saying he doesn't deny Scripture condemns homosexuality, but adding the rhetorical question, quote, "The issue is precisely whether the biblical judgment is correct." The biblical judgment is correct, Martin. It's you and your fellow homosexual travelers who are wrong. You are a filthy, condemnable lot who pervert teaching to feel good about yourselves and rationalize your evil. You can meet with the Pope all you want and tweet about it all you want. This is a homosexual papacy. So anything Francis says which contradicts divine law can completely be dismissed. He is wrong, flat out wrong, underscored by when he told a gay man that, quote, "God made you that way." The civil war the church is now engaged in has been brought to you first by communism and then accelerated by perverted homosexual men in the clergy, period. 10 years ago, church militants started telling you about all this. We were mocked continually. We weren't wrong then, and we aren't wrong now. Understand, your souls and the souls of your loved ones are being offered up by twisted men to support their own psychological illnesses. From decades of highly effeminate men in the pulpits to clergy in Rome, there is no authentic love for you, not one shred. God love you. I'm Michael Voris.